My name is George Miller. I am 76 years old, and I live in a house that was once full of laughter, bustle, the smell of coffee and fresh pastries. Now there is only the creak of the old floor and a deafening silence. I once built this house with my own hands, brick by brick, nail by nail, for my beloved Susan, with whom I lived for 42 years. She left 5 years ago, and since then the house has been a desert. I have 2 children, a son, Tom, and a daughter, Emily. They are adults, with their own families, affairs, and worries. They live an hour away, but we don't see each other often. Mostly on the phone, if they don't forget. Tom works in finance, always in a hurry, always speaking in fragments, as if I were an item on a to-do list for the day. Emily is a teacher, gentle, kind, but exhausted. She rarely calls. More often she writes short messages, Dad, are you okay? We're all busy. We love you. I understand, everyone has their own life. I don't expect daily visits, I don't ask for anything except a little attention. But lately I've begun to notice that my presence in their lives is more of an obligation than a desire. When they do come, it's quickly, with a nervous glance at the clock. They say, they still have to make it to the store, to a meeting, to practice with the grandchildren. I sit at the table and listen to them talk to each other about things that I don't understand anymore, new apps, taxes, the value of bitcoins. And then they get up and say, we'll stop by again next week. But the weeks go by, and I'm left with the TV and my old radio. My health isn't what it used to be. My heart sometimes fails, my joints ache, especially in the rain. My hospital records lie in a drawer by the bed, neatly folded. I'm my own nurse and caregiver. When he had a heart attack 3 years ago, Tom came for a day, brought fruit, talked to the doctor, left a business card for a private clinic and disappeared. Emily came more often, but she was always tired, nervous, as if it was all too hard for her. But, it's not even loneliness that hurts the most. What hurts the most is the feeling that no one needs you anymore. That your opinion is old-fashioned, your stories are uninteresting, and your presence is a burden. Recently, my grandson, Jacob, who is 15, was sitting with me on the couch. I started telling him about how he served in Vietnam, how he saved a comrade under fire, how those times taught me to appreciate life. And he shrugged his shoulders and said, Grandpa, that was 100 years ago. You live in the past. Everything is different now. Then I smiled. But something in my heart tightened. Maybe it's true, I've stayed in my past, and they've long been ahead, on another road, where there's no place for me? Sometimes I look in the mirror and ask myself, who have I become? A person who is passed over in the pharmacy queue, who is not given a seat in transport. A man for whom even the saleswoman in the supermarket speaks more slowly and louder, as if to a child. Sometimes I don't recognize myself. This is not the George Miller I saw in my dreams on the decline of life. But do you know what's the strangest thing? Despite everything, something still lives in me. A small light. Maybe it's hope. Or maybe it's a habit of fighting. When I was young, life seemed like an endless series of possibilities. I grew up in Missouri, in a small town where everyone knew everyone else, and everyone valued work more than words. My father was a carpenter and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They didn't have much, but they gave me the most important thing, strength of spirit and a sense of dignity. At 20, I went to war. Not because I wanted to shoot, but because I believed, if my country called me, I had to go. I saw fear, pain, loss, but even more, brotherhood, true friendship, courage. In Vietnam, I learned to appreciate every moment and every person. Once I pulled a wounded boy from under machine gun fire. His name was Marcus. He later wrote me a letter, you didn't just save my life, George. You taught me what it means to be a man. After I returned, I married Susan. She was a nurse, the same sweet girl who had once dressed my cut at a school picnic. Our marriage was not perfect, but it was real. We built a house, planted an apple tree in the yard, raised 2 children. I worked in construction, building houses, bridges, roads. My hands were building the future for others, and I was proud of it. Tom and Emily never knew how my mother and I counted pennies to pay for their education. How I worked nights in the garage to buy them their first bicycles. How Susan and I didn't eat dinner when the gas bill was too high. But it was right. They should go further, higher, easier. I wanted their path to be freer than mine. When Tom went to college, I cried in the bathroom so no one would see. My boy is a future economist. Emily always dreamed of teaching children, and when she got her diploma, I gave her a present, an old typewriter, because she loved to write poetry. I was respected. In town I was known as an honest, reliable man. I was the one people came to for advice, the one they elected as the head of the Veterans Union, the one they invited to give a toast at a wedding. I wasn't outstanding, but I was worthy. And that's where I'm proud. Now, when I remember those years, my heart sinks. Not because they're gone. But because no one asks about them. My past has become like a shadow, uninteresting, superfluous. When I try to tell something, they nod gently, change the subject, or say ***, never mind, Grandpa, we've heard that before. ***, but I don't repeat myself just like that. I talk because I'm afraid to forget. Because if I forget, who will remember then? If my story disappears, how will my children know who I was? And who they have become because of me? I still remember Susan laughing as we danced barefoot in the kitchen to Elvis. How Tom cried when he broke his leg and I carried him 2 blocks away. How Emily first said, "Dad, I love you," so simple, with the morning sun in her hair. These memories are my treasure. But now they are like paintings on the walls of an empty gallery that no one visits anymore. I thought old age was about peace, about blankets and tea, about gratitude from children. But it turns out it's about waiting for a call that won't come. About words that won't be said. About a memory that holds more than the heart can bear. But maybe all is not lost yet. Maybe there is something more ahead. The greatest pain is not physical. Not the one in your knee after a change in weather, not the one in your heart when your blood pressure jumps, although those also make it known. The greatest pain is when no one looks at you anymore. When your presence in the room doesn't cause any reaction. When you become the background. Last week I was at the post office. The usual line, as always. I stood with my cane, holding on with both hands, because my leg was once again protesting agonizingly against my morning walk. In front of me were 2 young men, behind me were 3 more. They waited, they were silent. But when another window opened, they all rushed in, overtaking me. One even caught my cane and muttered something like ***, sorry, Grandpa. ***, but no one gave in. No one looked me in the eye. It was as if I hadn't been there. I returned home with heavy legs and an even heavier heart. In the evening I tried to call Tom. I just wanted to talk. To hear how he was doing. But he didn't answer. Only 3 days later I wrote a short message, ***, I've been busy. Everything's fine. How are you? ***, I replied, I'm holding up. He didn't write anymore. Emily calls less often. Her voice is always tired, as if I'm just another duty on the list. She used to ask for advice, counsel, even ask for help. Now it's just formalities. Did you take your medicine? Did you have anything to eat? Was everything okay? But I feel like she's waiting for me to say yes, so she can quickly hang up. And the grandchildren. They used to run to me with outstretched arms, shouting, ***, tell me more. ***, I made up stories about sea adventures for them, taught them how to fish, showed them how to build a tree house. Now they come rarely and sit by the phones. Once I asked Jacob to help me set up the TV, and he said, \**, there's Google, Grandpa. Look it up yourself. \**, I wasn't angry. I was numb. This is even worse. Recently I fell in the yard. I slipped on the wet stones near the old flower bed that Susan loved so much. I lay there for 20 minutes. I couldn't get up. And no one saw me. Only my neighbor, Mrs. Grace, an elderly woman who can barely walk on her own, looked out and screamed. She called an ambulance. They came and helped. One of the doctors said, \**, it's good that at least someone saw you, sir. Otherwise we could have been lying there until morning. \**, and where were my children? Where was the son for whom I once took off my shoes to buy him school shoes? Where was the daughter I read stories to at night when she was sick? I called Tom the next day and told him about the fall. He sighed and said, **Dad, why weren't you careful? Maybe you should think about a nursing home? Nursing home. If he had punched me in the face, it wouldn't have hurt so much. He said it in the same tone I used to say to him **, maybe you're too young to play soccer with the grown-ups. **, but now the roles have reversed. Now I'm too old. But I'm not a rotten stump. I still feel. I still think. I still have memories and dreams. I'm not a burden. I'm a human being. And while I'm breathing, I have to prove it. It was Wednesday. An ordinary day that didn't promise anything special. The sky was cloudy, the air was damp, but I decided to go to the park. My legs weren't the same anymore, but I still tried to take at least a short walk, so that my heart wouldn't stop completely. I sat down on a bench by the lake. In that park I used to take Emily to feed the ducks. Tom played baseball for the school team nearby. And now, I was sitting alone, facing the water, which once splashed with laughter, but now only reflected heavy clouds. A young woman sat down next to me. She looked about 35, neatly dressed, with large tired eyes. We were silent for 10 minutes. Then she suddenly said, "Excuse me for asking. Do you come here often?" I turned to her and nodded. "Every day. Sometimes it seems that only here something still remembers me." She laughed through her sadness. "That is very accurate. I come here when I can't stand being at home anymore. The kids are small, my husband is at work, I work remotely. But the scariest thing is when you feel like no one hears you. It's like you don't exist." We looked at each other. I said, "I thought it was just me, an old man. But it seems it's not about age. It's about people who are tired of each other." We talked for almost an hour. About everything. I told her about Susan, about the war, about the children. She told me about her fears, about maternal burnout, about loneliness in a crowd. I saw something familiar in her eyes, the same thing I saw in my mirror. Before she left, she said, "You know, you remind me of my grandfather. I never asked him who he was before he became just Grandpa. And now I regret it." She held out her hand to me. "My name is Sarah. If you don't mind, I'd like to come here sometimes and listen to your stories." I shook her hand. Light, young, but so sincere. "George. And I'm all for it." When she left, I stayed sitting. Something changed in me. Perhaps for the first time in a long time I felt that I still mattered. That my memories were not a burden, but a treasure. And there were those who needed them. I returned home and looked for a long time at the bookshelf, where my old notebook lay among the piles of papers. I used to write fragments of memories, phrases, thoughts in it. But then I threw it away, because why? That evening I took it out. And for the first time in years I wrote, "Today I became a person again. Not a shadow, not a background. Simply, George. And this is the best thing that has happened to me lately. Asterisk for the first time in many years, I woke up not from silence, but from a thought. It haunted me all night long, it played in my head like a song you can't forget, asterisk, I'm still alive. I still have something to say. Asterisk in the kitchen, I made myself coffee, with cinnamon, just like Susan liked. I sat down at the table and opened the same notebook. The pages were yellowed, some were stained with coffee, but the handwriting was still recognizable. I reread the old notes, excerpts from the front, the words of my first dad, the names of friends who had long since passed. This was my memory, not erased, not devalued. I took a pen and began to write. Asterisk, I don't know if anyone will ever read this. Maybe these notes will remain only for me. But I have to do it. Because every moment I live matters. Because every sacrifice is a brick from which our todays are built. Asterisk, I decided to write a book. Not for fame, for the truth. For myself. And, perhaps, for the sake of those who will one day forget who I was. That same day I called Emily. Not because I wanted to complain. I wanted to speak, honestly, calmly, with love. Amy, I said, I've decided something here. I've started writing memoirs. I want to leave something behind. Not photos, not things. But a story. She fell silent. Dad. This is wonderful. Can I come and read what you wrote? I didn't expect this. My heart sank, with joy and pain at the same time. Of course. I'd be glad. 3 days later she was at my place. She brought homemade pastries. We sat at the same table where we used to drink cocoa in her childhood. She read my notes, sometimes wiping away tears. Dad. I didn't know. I never asked, because I never told, I answered. I thought it wasn't important. But I was wrong. That evening I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a connection. Alive, warm, real. Sarah began to come to the park more often. She brought tea in a thermos, and I brought new pages. We laughed, argued, discussed. Sometimes others joined us, the elderly, lonely, silent. And then, talked. We created a small community. A circle of voices, as Sarah called it. Everyone brought something of their own, poems, excerpts from life, even old songs. We became witnesses to each other. I am no longer afraid of loneliness. Because I realized, the greatest loneliness is when you don't speak. When you are silent for so long that you don't even notice how you are losing yourself. And I have found myself. I don't know how much longer I have left. But I know for sure, I am not a shadow. I am not the grandfather from a forgotten photograph. I am George Miller. A builder, a veteran, a husband, a father, a writer. And as long as I can hold a pen, I have a voice. And here I am sitting on the same bench by the lake where my quiet restructuring began. Autumn is already in full swing, the air smells of leaves, and the trees are shedding golden memories to the ground. I hold the printed pages in my hands, the first chapter of my book, which Sarah and I sent to a local publisher. And what would you think? They were interested. They offered to publish it in a limited edition. For libraries, schools, veterans organizations. It's not a bestseller. But it's my life. No embellishments. No fabrications. No shame. Every page is me. Today Emily brought her grandchildren. Jacob, the same one who once called my stories old, came up and said, "Grandpa, can I read your book?" At school they said it was a true example of oral history. I almost burst into tears. But I held it back. I just handed him a copy. Here. And know this, every word in it is true. Even when it hurts. He sat down next to me and read. And I watched, and I saw my world come alive again. How my past became more than just a memory. It became a legacy. I often think about what old age has taught me. And here's what I'll say, old age is not the end. It's not a silent surrender. It's a chance to say what matters most. It's a time to unpack the suitcase of memories and share what really matters. No one should live in silence. And no one deserves to disappear without a trace. If I could say to everyone who is still young, who is on the run, who is always in a hurry, I would say, stop. Listen. There are those living next to you who have already walked the path you are just starting to tread. They don't want attention out of duty, they want to be heard while they still have a voice. I am George Miller. And I am no longer afraid of aging. I met him with open eyes. And now I know, dignity is when you allow yourself to be true. As long as you breathe, you have the power to change your present. As long as you remember, you live. And as long as you speak, you leave a mark. Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.